Welcome to the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. This is our 203rd episode. My name is Sunsara Taylor, and today is the rotten 4th of July, a day we are told to celebrate this land of the thief, home of the slave. Well, here at the RNL Show, we say hell no to celebrating America. And we say yes to celebrating and fighting for revolution, for a whole new way to live and a fundamentally different system. Last week, we saw that Cheeto-colored American Hitler, Donald Trump, lying and spewing racist garbage every time his lips moved.
He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
And we saw Genocide Joe, Zombie Edition, double down on his crimes against humanity in their complete shit show of a debate.
We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them.
These two really are perfect representatives of this outmoded system of capitalism imperialism. Outmoded, that is long past its expiration date. These two have profound differences with each other, but there they were competing over who could better finish the job of the genocide against the Palestinians, competing over who could crack down harder on immigrants, competing over who is more in love with America, this model of racist, depraved genocide. Again, Trump and Biden, both of them disgusting, revolting, but perfect representatives of this putrid system of capitalism imperialism, a system that cannot be reformed and must be overthrown. Well, our leader, Bob Avakian, is the perfect representative of the revolution that we need and the future of real emancipation that this revolution aims to bring about. Bob Avakian tells the truth, and he breaks down the truth so that everybody can understand it. Bob Avakian says straight up, American lives are not more important than other people's lives.
We need an orientation or morality and a movement that is internationalist, that proceeds on the understanding that the whole world comes first, not America, and that the fundamental and ultimate goal is the emancipation of all humanity.
Bob Avakian has never and will never make peace with this system of capitalism imperialism. Instead, he has fought for and he has forged the revolutionary understanding and the strategy we need to make a real revolution to overthrow this system. And through it all, Bob Avakian has maintained his love for humanity and an expansive appreciation for the beauty and understanding that humans can create through science, through the arts, and how all of this, too, is an essential part of the revolution we need. And every day, B.A. Bob Avakian is providing world-class leadership to show us how we can advance the fight to make this revolution real, right in this country, right in this time. So today, for this July 4th edition of the RNL Show, we're going to broadcast a significant portion of the interview that we did here on this show with Bob Avakian a little while back. We're going to broadcast the opening, the first of the series of 3 interviews that we did with him, where we ask him to share more about his life. We ask him if he always had this view of this country, of America, and this system, and how he came to have this view. And by viewing this portion of this interview that we're going to share with you today, you'll get a chance to get to know this revolutionary leader more deeply, how he came to be this way, and you will get a deep sense of the true nature of this country and why we say America is nothing to celebrate. After that, at the end of the show, I'll bring you 10 ways that the Democrats have repeatedly stabbed women in the back when it comes to abortion rights. We keep being told, if you care about women, if you care about abortion, you got to vote for the Democrats. Well, I'm going to break down the truth of their actual record. But first, to get us started, we have 2 shorter pieces. First, an inconvenient truth, and then a social media response to last week's presidential debate by Lenny Wolff. So with that, let's get started.
An inconvenient but absolutely necessary truth for July 4th. The U.S., founded in slavery, has perpetrated genocide against Native American people invaded, occupied, and staged coups throughout the world.
September 11th, 1973, a U.S.-backed coup in Chile led by General Augusto Pinochet ousted Chile's democratically elected president, Salvador Allende.
The CIA has released documents that show its role in the 1953 coup. That is the coup that toppled Iran's democratically elected prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. Shortly after his election, the CIA began to plan his overthrow.
Dropped nuclear bombs.
This is Hiroshima. The day after the atom bomb exploded, 30% of the city's population was killed.
Napalmed farming villages. Trained legions of baby-killing death squads. Assassinated leaders they didn't like.
Patrice Lumumba became the Congo's first prime minister after it gained independence in 1960, but he was only in office for a few months, which led to him being ousted in a coup, imprisoned, tortured, and later executed.
Terrorized wedding parties with drone bombings.
We were having a traditional marriage ceremony. One of the missiles hit the car was totally burned. Blood was everywhere, and the people killed and injured were scattered everywhere.
And now, they are bringing humanity closer to the brink of catastrophic, even nuclear war, with their imperialist rivals in Russia and China. And they've lied about every bit of this in the name of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Now, please welcome the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Folks, how are you? We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. All that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons.
And please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country. We have a border that's the most dangerous place anywhere in the world. Consider the most dangerous place anywhere in the world. And he opened it up, and these killers are coming into our country, and they are raping and killing women. We have the Palestinians, and we have everybody else rioting all over the place.
I want to talk to you about the debate, the great debate, between Genocide Joe Biden and that fascist Hitler Donald Trump. On the one side, you had Trump, that fascist lunatic who blamed every single problem produced by this imperialist, this capitalist imperialist system, whether it's unemployment, whether it's opiate addiction, whatever, was blamed on the immigrants. Immigrants who have been driven here by that same capitalist imperialist system that causes all those problems. This is straight out of the Nazi playbook, where they blamed the Jews for every problem in Germany. On the other side, you had Genocide Joe Biden, most of the time looking like some member of the cast of The Walking Dead. He only jerked to life when it came time to talk about how great the troops are that he sends all over the world to defend this same capitalist imperialist system. Here's three things you need to know about this debate. Number one, this system has no answers. They had no answers. No answers to the wars that are breaking out all over this planet. No answers to what's happening with our climate and our environment. No answers to the racism that never, ever ends in America. No answers to these horrible, brutal attacks and persecution going down on women and lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. No answers whatsoever to anything, because their system has no answers. That's number one. Number two, these Democrats will never fight the fascists the way they need to be fought. Because like the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian says, they are worried that if the masses come into the streets, they will get all out of the control of the Democrats and the system that they serve. Number 3, you need to get with this revolutionary leader, Bob Avakian. Bob Avakian's developed an understanding of a whole different way we could be living. And he's shown in social media messages why we need a revolution against this system and how people could make a revolution in this time, not in some far-off distant time. Go to Bob Avakian Official. That's Bob Avakian Official. Be part of bringing into being a whole different world. Get with us now. No fascist Trump. No genocide Joe. This whole damn system's got to go.
So listen, we're really excited for our audience and especially new people just learning about the revolution to get a chance to hear from you directly about why we need a revolution, why this revolution is possible and what this revolution is about, and to get to know you better through this process. So the first question we wanted to ask you takes off from a spoken word piece that you wrote a number of years ago, an incredible spoken word piece called All Played Out. And I want to read the second verse and ask you about it. You write, "This puffed up stuff about the land of the free."
This puffed up stuff about the land of the free and the home of the brave. A country that built itself on bodies of slaves and ruthless genocidal robbery, that spreads its empire through plunder, driving countless people under, with its bloody red, white, and blue rag unfurled. All this pompous nonsense about the leader of the free world. That's all laid out.
A country that built itself on bodies of slaves and ruthless genocidal robbery, that spreads its empire through plunder, driving countless people under with its bloody red, white, and blue rag unfurled. All this pompous nonsense about the leader of the free world. That's all played out. So we wanted to ask and give you a chance to talk about, did you always have this view of America? And if not, how did you first come to see this country in this way and its role in the world?
Oh no. I was a very loyal American. You know, I think I said in my memoir that one time I said I felt like getting down on my knees and thanking God that I was born in this great country, unlike all these other unfortunate people all around the world who were, forced to live in other countries. And I remember when I was 16, I think, I went to a baseball game, a Giants baseball game in San Francisco, and of course they played the national anthem before, and so, everybody rose and I got up and I enthusiastically was singing, "Oh, say, can you see," et cetera, et cetera. And when it finished, the woman in front of me turned around and said, "My, you have a beautiful voice." And I just can't help thinking back about the irony of that, But then, as I did learn things, I used to go to the games and this was during the Vietnam War. When they would play the national anthem, I did a different version that someone I knew was part of the movement that I was part of made up, which was, "Oh, Uncle Sam, get out of Vietnam. Get out, get out, get out of Vietnam." So that was a different rendition of the song, and didn't get quite the same response from the people in front of me, but that was a transformation I went through, and it was a lot of different things. I grew up in Berkeley. I was very fortunate to go to a high school. There was only one high school in the entire city, so everybody, of course, went to it. And in those days, there weren't all these Christian fundamentalist schools. There were a few Catholic schools, but mostly everybody went to the high school, public high school. And so you were thrown together with all these people, Latinos, there were a lot of black people, and, some of whom I had known from being in sports competition earlier. And then we got put together, and because I was playing football, I was in gym class with a lot of people who were on the football team who had come from the different middle schools or junior high schools where they were mainly black people. And so this was like, introduced me to a whole different side of America. And, you know, I had a lot of experiences. Some of them are funny to look back on, but they weren't particularly funny at the time. You know, they were kind of hair-raising. But, you know, this was starting me on a different path of learning about what this country is really all about. So that was the start of it.
I have to ask, funny and hair-raising, maybe you could give an example.
Well, you know, when I was in 10th grade, this high school was only 3 years at that time, 10th grade, 11th, and 12th. So when I was in 10th grade, I was in gym class, and at that particular time, our instruction, so to speak, was swimming. And so I was, you know, just standing by the pool, hanging out, and there was this friend of mine, Langston Tabor, who, you know, had come from a different junior high, but then we had some friction when we played sports in junior high, but then we became friends in high school, and he was kind of hanging out behind me, and I'm just minding my own business, and all of a sudden this big dude comes up and he's just looming over me, and he looks at me and he says, "Are you Bob Avakian?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Did you go to Garfield?" That's the junior high I went to, which was almost all white. And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Did you play basketball?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Did you play against Burbank?" That's where he went. I said, "Yeah." And I'm trying to figure out what the hell's going on here. And he said, "Did you foul me?" And then I had a sense something big was up, you know. And so, but you know, I was kind of naive, so I just kind of straightforwardly said, "Well, I might have. I can't remember something like that." And then he looked at me, and he got this big grin across his face. And I thought it might have lasted like a minute or two. Probably only lasted about 15 seconds. And then he finally just kind of turned and slowly walked away. And after this was over, Langston came running up to me, and he said, "Man, you don't know what just happened here." He said, "That's Jack McCrae. He's one of the baddest dudes in the whole school." And I said, "What are you talking about, man?" He said, "He was getting ready to fire on you. He was going to punch you out." I said, "Come on, man." He was smiling. And he laughed and he said, "Yeah, but when he gets that smile on his face, that's when he's going to unload on somebody." But I guess what happened was Jack just kind of looked at it and said, "Oh man, this white boy, he just kind of doesn't get it, so I'm just going to let him slide." So that was kind of a thing that made an impression on me, shall we say. You know, it started me thinking about a bunch of stuff, because you realized that this wasn't really just about, you know, the basketball game. There was a lot of tension in that game. In fact, they nearly stopped the game because we had broke out. Fights were just about ready to break out every few minutes. But this was much more like people testing you. You know, like, see where are you coming from? What kind of person are you? You know, how are you going to respond when they put it to you a little bit? You know, because things were going on that were much bigger than me and Jack McCrae. This was the whole time when the civil rights movement was gaining momentum, and it also translated into personal relations and just, you know, everyday social relations where, you know, people, especially black people, just weren't putting up with shit the way they had before, you know, and they were feeling the strength of the, you know, gathering movement. And so this was sort of an expression of that, even though it was in a sort of a personal realm. And so, you know, these are the kind of experiences that I had a number of times in high school that kind of, you know, opened me up to more things, should I say.
The other thing that you cited and you sang was "Get Out of Vietnam."
Yeah.
How did that play into your changing view on America?
Well, you see, here's where things are interconnected. Like, as a result of these experiences, I made a lot of friends of different kinds. You know, I ate lunch one semester with some Japanese girls who were, you know, very sharp and smart, but also, you know, a lot of fun. So I learned something about their culture, you know. And then, you know, just going through high school and everything, I really began, as a result of black friends of mine, you know, to get a much better, deeper sense of what it was like to be black in this country and the whole history of it. I mean, you know, not that they gave me history lessons, but just, you know, the everyday exchanges of friends, you know. I began, and I really developed a deep anger and hatred about this. And I remember the turning point for me about Vietnam came in 1965, when there was a march, from Selma. And I got up in the morning and I got the newspaper and I opened up and there's this big article about this attack on these civil rights marchers, on the Pettus Bridge. And I was going back and forth about Vietnam. I'd been part of the free speech movement in Berkeley, and most of the leaders, if not all of them, of that movement were against the Vietnam War. But I hadn't made up my mind yet. I respected them a lot. I was influenced by them, but I was doing some study to try to understand it, but I hadn't made up my mind. And I opened up the paper that day, and I looked at it, and these pictures of Selma, and I said to myself, how in the fuck can the rulers of this country be trying to bring freedom to the people in Vietnam when this is what goes on in this country time after time? And, yes, it's in the South, but the leaders of the country as a whole are doing nothing to stop this. How in the hell can they be bringing freedom to the people in Vietnam? And that was it for me. From then on, I was firmly opposed to the Vietnam War.
One other follow-up question I want to ask is the kind of questioning and transformation that you're describing, I think, was going on among a lot of people at that time. And it is so radically different than the culture right now, which is just suffocating with reverence for the U.S. military and its role in the world. And thank you for your service at the ball games, in the basketball, in the airports, in the culture very broadly. And you have stressed that this is something that really needs to be sharply taken on. Why do you think that's so important?
Because you're never going to bring about any kind of fundamental change. And certainly you're not going to bring about a revolution when people are still pledging their allegiance in whatever way to this whole imperialist system, and the dominant imperialists in the world, namely the U.S., which wreaks tremendous havoc on people all over the world, causing tremendous suffering, as well as being the major destroyer of the environment. And unless people break with that, no kind of really positive change, and certainly not any fundamental revolutionary change, can possibly take place. And with all this, all this bullshit of, thank you for your service, it reflects the fact that, most people, one thing that we talked about Vietnam, one thing that the ruling class of this country summed up after Vietnam was their army was coming apart at the seams. It was no longer a reliable fighting force by the end of the Vietnam War in the early 70s. And, I myself, on the Berkeley campus and more generally, had a lot of exchanges both with veterans who'd been in Vietnam and also with soldiers who were on leave, who were either on their way to Vietnam or coming back from Vietnam, because I usually did a year in Vietnam, as I recall. And, they were turning against the war in greater and greater, and partly, because of the struggle we waged with them, but also mainly because of the larger thing going on, both what was happening in the war and what they were seeing and what they were being forced to do, the atrocities they were being forced to commit, and also the massive opposition to it around the world, but also of great significance in the U.S. itself. And so, at that time, the ruling class summed up, this was an army where we drafted a lot of people. And they had a lot of people in the army who really didn't want to be there in the first place, and who really identified increasingly with the people who were opposing the war. I mean, just to take the moment here, one of the big things, bullshit things that really angers me is all these ruling class figures who say, all these students and everybody else on the college campuses and these elite campuses, all these kids who opposed to Vietnam, they were all just a bunch of spoiled brats. They didn't have to go to Vietnam because they got a student deferment. And, then all the working class and poor kids had to go and fight in Vietnam. The fact is that the strongest opposition to the Vietnam War was among the poor people, among black people, among Latinos. That's where the strongest opposition was. And even the anti-war movement that I was part of, while there were a lot of very large numbers of white middle-class kids and other middle-class kids involved, we were also influenced by people like Stokely Carmichael, and others who were calling out the war as imperialist. So it is just absolute garbage that it was, only these privileged brats who opposed the war. But to get back to the point more directly, the ruling class summed up, this is not a good army for us where we draft people, most of whom come from among the ranks of the oppressed, however they thought of it. But objectively, they came from the ranks of the oppressed. And, we were forcing them to fight in these wars. So they went over to an all-volunteer army. So now the compulsion for people to join is, economic. It's not a draft where you go to jail if you don't answer the call to be in the military. And so, you got a tiny percentage of the population that's in the military, and everybody else doesn't have to go, especially the better off people. And so a lot of this is what we call the parasitism of American imperialism, where you're basically feasting off the people of the world. You're at the high point of the end of the food chain, living off of the women in Bangladesh who are slaving away in garment factories, while, by the way, their country's being engulfed by water because of climate change. Or the children in the Congo who are mining the minerals that go into cell phones and computers and what have you. We're living, in this country, you're living off of that. No matter what part of the society you're in. Yes, the spoils of this, to put it that way, are very unevenly distributed, but there's still a fact that everybody is getting some of those spoils. And so, the way I look at it is a thank you for your services. Thank you, you're doing this so I don't have to do it and I can live off this parasitism that you're out there slaughtering people to make possible.
Two years ago, the fascist-packed, illegitimate Supreme Court ripped abortion rights away from women. Every day since, women are being forced to have children they did not want or to carry pregnancies that put their very lives in danger. The fury of women and all those who care about justice is simmering across this country, and hardly a day goes by when the Democratic Party doesn't try to pimp off this anger by telling you that if you really care about abortion rights, if you really care about women, you have no choice but to vote for the Democrats. Well, what is the actual track record of these Democrats when it comes to abortion rights? Here are 10 ways the Democrats have repeatedly stabbed women in the back when it comes to abortion rights. 1. The Democrats have ceded the moral high ground to Christian fascist haters of women, and they've done this for decades. Starting in 1992, Bill and Hillary Clinton insisted that abortion should be safe, legal, and rare.
Our vision should be of an America where abortion is safe and legal, but rare.
Going back really at least 15 years, in talking about abortion being safe, legal, and rare. And by rare, I mean rare.
They even wrote rare into the Democratic Party platform. But why rare? This implies that there's something morally wrong with abortion. There is not. It is a great thing for women to be able to decide for themselves when and whether to have a child. Women need abortion on demand and without apology. 2. The Democrats have approved the Hyde Amendment every year since 1977. The Hyde Amendment cut Medicaid funding so that poor women could no longer afford safe, legal abortions. Just months after it passed, Rosie Jimenez became the first woman known to have died from a cheap, illegal abortion because of Hyde. She left behind a 4-year-old daughter. Others have died, and millions of women have been forced to have children against their will with all the extra degradation that brings when you are already in poverty. After years of pressure, when he was running for president, Biden finally promised that he would be the one to repeal Hyde. But that was a lie. He, just like Democratic presidents Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama, has approved Hyde every single year as president. 3. Obama went out of his way to build the Hyde Amendment restrictions into his much-celebrated Affordable Care Act.
And one more misunderstanding I want to clear up. Under our plan, No federal dollars will be used to fund abortions, and federal conscience laws will remain in place. Now,
on top of that, Obama gave states the option to ban any health care plan that covers abortion, even with their own private funds, which half the states in this country immediately did. 4. When Christian fascists started demonizing, stalking, and assassinating abortion providers, the Democratic Party distanced themselves from these providers. One example among many, for years, the anti-abortion fascists targeted the heroic abortion doctor, Dr. George Tiller. They put out his home address. They published wanted posters. They demonized him in fascist media.
No, it's Tiller the killer is Tiller the baby killer.
Tiller the baby killer out in Kansas, acquitted today of murdering babies.
The notorious Tiller the baby killer case, where Dr. George Tiller destroys fetuses for just about any reason right up until the birth date for $5,000.
In 1993, Tiller survived an assassination attempt when he was shot in both arms. And then, in 2009, Tiller was assassinated while he served as an usher in his church.
It was a single bullet that killed the doctor who for 36 years weathered massive protests, bombs at his clinic, and in 1993, gunshot wounds. But he defiantly held his ground.
What I am doing is legal, what I'm doing is moral, what I'm doing is ethical, and you're not going to run me out of town.
Nearly 1,000 people showed up to his funeral from all across the country. This man was so beloved. He was such a courageous hero. I went. Not a single Democratic politician showed up. 5. The Democrats constantly focus their criticism of abortion bans on the most extreme cases. Oh, they say there's no exception for rape. Oh, there's no exception for the life of the woman. Yes, these things reveal just how fascist and woman-hating the anti-abortion movement is. But by consistently refusing to speak up for the millions and millions of women who get abortions just because they don't want to be mothers at that particular time in their lives, this line of defense sets people up to accept ever more extreme abortion bans, so long as there are a few exceptions. It is completely defensive. And this is exactly what has happened all the way up to abortion being overturned. 6. The Democrats refuse to take on the Christian fascists straight up. Instead, they repeatedly seek common ground with these fanatical haters of women. Back in 2009, for example, Obama made a point of inviting Rick Warren to give the convocation at his first inauguration. Who's Rick Warren? Here's how I put it in an article at the time. Quote, Warren unapologetically demands the subordination of women, that is half of humanity, to men. His church's website quotes 1 Corinthians, the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is man. But that's not all. Rick Warren actually compares abortion to the Jewish Holocaust. The fact that anyone can morally equate women who choose abortion with Nazis is astounding. But the fact that pro-choice and progressive people can advocate common ground with this is deadly self-delusion. 7. In their pursuit of common ground, the Democrats have repeatedly run anti-abortion candidates. They've even bragged about this as some kind of brilliant election strategy. 8. The Democrats repeatedly break their promises to stand up for abortion rights. When he was running for president the first time, Obama promised that the very first thing he would do, if elected, is to codify abortion rights. That is, pass a law that would protect abortion rights even if the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade.
Well, the first thing I'd do as president is sign the Freedom of Choice Act. That's the first thing that I'd do.
Once he got elected?
The Freedom of Choice Act is not my highest legislative priority.
9. The Democrats capitulated in advance. They gave up without a fight when the Supreme Court was clearly on track to overturn abortion rights in 2022. We caught them on video. The fact that there was absolutely no fight being waged to stop the overturning of Roe v. Wade is why I joined with others to initiate and lead Rise Up for Abortion Rights. We sounded the alarm. We spoke out and did nonviolent civil disobedience. We went to jail. We mobilized tens of thousands of furious women and others to flood the streets.
This decision must not stand! must not stand. Legal abortion and on demand. Legal abortion on demand. This decision must not stand.
Meanwhile, what did the so-called leaders of the so-called movement, who are so slavishly tied to the Democrats, do? Many of them attacked us as alarmists and spread lies and slanders against me and against the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian, who is providing extraordinary leadership and clarity. These haters did this to derail this mass struggle and keep people from looking deeper at the nature of this system and the need for revolution. 10. The Democrats have spent decades refusing to even use the word abortion. Instead of talking about the right to abortion, they talked about the right to choose. They're not for abortion, they insist. They're just pro-choice.
I am pro-choice. I believe in Roe versus Wade, and I come to that conclusion not because I'm pro-abortion, but because ultimately I don't think women make these decisions casually.
And they've come up with a million other ways to tiptoe around the word.
Women's ability to get basic health care, our right to make the most deeply personal decisions, is facing the most significant threats in recent memory.
In my right to choose, I had 5 children in 6 years and 1 week. It's none of our business how other people choose the size and timing of their families.
Joe Biden, who personally opposes abortion, used the word only one time in the first 1,253 days of being president. Then he finally uttered the word during his disastrous debate last week with Trump, and he used it negatively.
But we are not for late-term abortion, period. Period, period.
Don't they say that the definition of insanity is repeating the same thing over and over and expecting different results? Don't be insane. Stop voting for these Democrats thinking it is going to protect abortion rights and stop this vicious war on women. These Democrats will never fight the Christian fascists the way they need to be fought. They won't do this because while they have very profound differences with these fascists, they are loyal to the same system of capitalism imperialism that has given rise to these fascists, a system that has the patriarchal oppression of women built into it. And, as Bob Avakian has pointed out, quote, the Democrats, whether or not they are personally religious, and specifically Christian, base themselves on the conviction that religion, and in particular Christianity, is necessary in order to hold together their system of capitalism imperialism, which is full of cruelly exploitative and oppressive relations and divisions that could tear the country apart if religion did not play a major role in holding it together in the face of this terrible exploitation and oppression and the brutality and murder that enforces it. End quote. Break out of this system's choices. Stand up and speak and fight for the truth that these Democrats will never say or fight for. Forced motherhood is female enslavement. Women need abortion on demand and without apology. And right now, when the rights of women and others are being ripped away by the day, with even greater horrors in the offing, learn about and join the fight for a real revolution to overthrow this system that both the Democrats and these fascist Republicans represent. Go to @BobAvakianOfficial to learn more and connect with the RevCom Corps for the emancipation of humanity at revcom.us. Break the chains. Unleash the fury of women as a mighty force for revolution. All right, we've come to the end of today's show. I want to thank you for tuning in. If you are not yet, we ask you to become a Patreon of this show. That is to become a financial supporter, a regular supporter. We can only put this show out with the revolutionary truth, the leadership we're bringing you, the understanding we're bringing you in this extraordinary pivotal time. with your support. So please go to patreon.com/therevcomes and spread today's episode to friends and family. Leave a comment below with what you learned, what you thought, questions sparked by today's episode, and sign up for Revolution School, starting soon, for the chance to dig into Bob Avakian's social media messages 1 through 11, together with others. Because if you do not know why we need a revolution, and how that revolution can be made in this time, then you don't know what you need to know. And right now is the time to change that. Again, sign up for Revolution School. We'll put a link to how to do so in the description below. Thanks to the RNL team for putting this show together, and we'll see you back here next week.